right, Nick, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. This team has a lot of special pieces. They made a lot of great offseason additions to this team, but I think one addition they made, Nick, isn't a new rookie or an upcoming guy. This is a person who's been around for a while, but maybe be reinventing themselves with the Steelers.
Yeah, Miles, I think this report you dug up could be a sign of a new weapon, a pivotal weapon for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But before we get into that news, Steelers fans, as always, got a question for you guys to answer in the comment section below. Look, obviously, there's been a lot of great head coaches in Steelers history, namely 3 in the past 50 years or so. But there's also been a lot of great assistants in Pittsburgh Steelers history. And that's who we want you to focus on today below in the comment section. Who is your favorite? Who is the best Steelers assistant head coach in team history? Give us that guy in the comment section below. But all right, Miles, I'll throw it back over to you now. What's the latest out of Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Nick, when we talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's a lot of great history on the defensive side of the ball, and they've added another player throughout history who's been excellent on the defensive side of the ball. That's none other than cornerback, or so we think, Patrick Peterson. He is on this team, and he is by no means young. He is 33 and a half years old at this point in time. So I think that this is a very interesting story, so let's get on into it. It says, this over from CBS Sports, of course, says Patrick Peterson isn't just feeling young again while adjusting to the Steelers secondary. He's also terrorizing his young teammates on the other side of the ball. The Pro Bowl cornerback says he successfully confused quarterback Kenny Pickett, and he's done so by playing multiple new positions, Nate. He says, I'm moving all over the field, Peterson told McFadden. When asked to elaborate on learning a new position other than outside corner, the former Cardinals and Vikings standout said he's finally getting the opportunity to be a ball player. He compared his role to that of Cam Sutton, who signed with the Lions in free agency after playing all over Pittsburgh's defense, even taking snaps at safety. Pickett, in particular, has apparently been outspoken about Peterson's fit in this new hybrid role. He said, I got approval from my starting quarterback, Peterson said. Kenny Pickett, who's played in this league, who's seen a bunch of coverages in his young career, gave me the approval. He said, man, when you line up in this certain position, that really just F's me up. So I'm planning on making a lot of plays this year. Nick, I think this is a really interesting story because you hear about corners who maybe lose a step, things like that. I think of Baltimore Raven guy, Ladarius Webb. He was a great corner, fell back, played safety for a while. Now, this seems like Patrick Peterson, he still has that step, but preeminently isn't dropping back to the safety role. He's dropping to the all over the field role, that position that we really like that DBs are playing nowadays, where they are multiple different positions, multiple different aspects on the field. And I think that's going to make him a big weapon going forward, and this tremendously upgrade to the Steelers defense. What do you think about this one, Nick?
So I think first and foremost, anytime you can confuse an offense, and Kenny Pickett, even though he's only going into a second year, he's a smart guy. That's probably one of his strongest attributes, his ability to read defenses and react. That's one of the reasons he was drafted in the first round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. The fact that he's confusing Pickett is a great sign that he'll confuse a lot of the other top quarterbacks in the AFC, namely Joe Burrow. You've got Lamar Jackson, of course, Deshaun Watson. Then, of course, you have the big dogs. You have the Allens. You now have Aaron Rodgers. Of course, you can throw in Mahomes in that list as well. So confusing the quarterback leads to turnovers. Turnovers win you games. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a phenomenal example of that. They were totally outplayed by the Cincinnati Bengals week 1 of last season, but on the back of several key turnovers, they were able to pull out an overtime victory. That, I think, is the recipe for the Pittsburgh Steelers to overcome a team like the Bengals, who admittedly have a little bit more talent on paper in terms of the offensive side of the ball. They can force turnovers by confusing them. And that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers, they weren't bad at last season in terms of forcing turnovers, but they were middle of the pack. They finished with the 14th most takeaways in the NFL in the 2022 season. Patrick Peterson, even though he's getting up there in age, had 5 interceptions last year for the Minnesota Vikings. So he's still the ball hawk. He still has the ability to force those turnovers. Now you throw him into a defense and a chance to confuse some offenses. I think we're going to see a lot of turnovers go through the roof. And by the way, it's not just going to be Peterson. You're going to see Minkah Fitzpatrick and a lot of these other guys get a lot more opportunities as well. Because once you have a guy like Peterson in some interesting spots, and I kind of find it pretty cool that he didn't highlight exactly what he was doing and where he was lining up, that could point that he could be doing a lot of unique things, maybe lining up at a nickel corner, but rotating to a safety coverage at the snap or vice versa, something crazy like that. Whatever it may be, it really is confusing Kenny Pickett, and I think it's going to confuse quarterbacks come regular season time, and I think that's going to throw a lot of opponents for a loop, and I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have a chance to create a lot of big plays on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Nick, and I think one thing to highlight here, you brought it up, those 5 interceptions last year for Peterson, those were the most in his career since 2012, the year after he was drafted. This guy had a phenomenal year last year, just showing once again he still has it. He is still dangerous. And that was when he was in a Minnesota defense where I think people looked at him a lot. He got a lot of looks, but he is by far not the biggest threat on this Pittsburgh defense. He's going to go under the radar in more ways than one, especially with the addition of new corner Joey Porter Jr. I think that's going to be a big one. You've got Minka Fitzpatrick back there as well. They've got KZ back there as well. DeMonte KZ, a very fan favorite safety. I think this secondary has got a lot of overwhelming potential, and having Patrick Peterson not being the focus, but being able to float around and potentially go under the radar is going to, as you said, wreak havoc on the other teams in the NFL. I think this is setting Pittsburgh up perfectly to get back to the defensive days that they used to have.
And minus just one more point to end on here. We know in the AFC North, it's a bloodbath. These teams are always competing down the stretch. One of the things I think that's very interesting about the division is so how well each team seems to know each other. Like, it seems to not matter the records. The games tend to be lower scoring most of the time because the defenses understand the offenses. But one of the things that can really flip it into another team's advantage is when a new guy enters the rivalry. The Bengals haven't played Peterson very much. The Ravens haven't played Peterson very much. The Browns haven't played Peterson very much. So this is going to be their first exposure to him into the season. Everybody else, for the most part, they've known each other. They've played against each other. They have a lot of film on, a lot of firsthand experience. Peterson, not so much. I think that's going to be kind of a secret weapon for the Steelers to unleash. And I expect Peterson to have a lot of big games, especially early in the season, as he surprises a lot of the Steelers' opponents.